Persona 5 Tactica is a great game if you don't think about the fact that they made this clearly 3.5-hour game 40 hours long. Now look, Persona 5 Royal is literally my favorite video game of all time, and a lot of people didn't really like Strikers from what I've been seeing, and I still thought Strikers was like in my top 10 of all time. So I'm actually really big on Strikers. It wasn't purely for gameplay either. It was literally mostly because of the story. And I was going into Tactica with like a really open mind. I'm like, okay, every time I've been like, oh, well, Atlas is gonna make Persona bad finally. They don't. They make it amazing. Even again, every single time I doubt them, they immediately prove me wrong. And the one time I give them my trust, they let me down. By the way, I'm about to spoil like this entire thing. Okay, so Toshiro and Arena are like great characters. I really like them both. Mostly Toshiro because he gets like way more development, but like I like Arena as a character. She's endearing. And the gameplay is really fun. Like I actually really enjoy this as like a turn-based strategy game. Never was like bored during the fights. But unfortunately, this game feels like a giant filler episode. Now, for the 3 hours of plot that we did get, I did think the plot was okay, even if I have a lot of problems with it. Look, okay, there are people who say that Persona 5 Royal and Strikers have messages that are like too on the nose, or it's like a baby sort of plot and everything. I've always like been moved to tears at certain segments of the game because something about them just really resonates with me as a person. And I've always appreciated pieces of media that are able to like hold their cheesiness on their sleeve and not like make fun of it because they're so insecure about it. Like I really like a game that is cheesy and it's unapologetic about it, and it pulls that off really well. To me, that's like what Persona 5 is. It's like the definition of like mastering the fundamentals of storytelling. Even during the serious parts of this game, I don't know, I think it just overall fell flat for me, and that makes me so sad to say because I never thought that a Persona 5 product would make me feel like that. I understand the message of the game. In fact, I agree with the core message of the game, but like, it's almost because I think that like no one really believes in the antithesis of it that it makes sense. And the execution that they tried to make it like kind of a nuanced circumstance based on like the results of what Toshiro did, they weren't compelling to me at all. I will be hard pressed to find anyone in the world who plays this game and actually thinks that Toshiro shouldn't have done what he did. So much so that I can get totally what they were going for. Like, no, but to Toshiro himself, that would feel terrible. Even then, even as someone who struggled with issues like overbearing guilt and all that type of stuff, I still don't think I could even see myself going through stuff like that. I don't know, they just didn't really communicate it in a way that made it very believable to me. It's not like it was horribly unrealistic, but like it didn't flow. Like you had to really think about like, okay, I guess I'll believe that Toshiro like had this response to this event, but I don't see why he would. I'm like 99% sure they were going to kill off Arena, and then like they were like, oh no, we can't have that in our like chibi game. It's supposed to just be like a cute little spin-off. It's not supposed to be that dark. But like a lot of stuff like her boss fight with like the giant like undead marionette puppet, stuff like that really makes me think that she was supposed to die, and also she says things that kind of would mean like, oh, I'll always be in your heart, like even like before she actually like disappears and everything. Like it seems like it's really stuff that would only really hit hard if she was actually dead in the real world, but they made her live for some reason. And while I do like Arena and I like that she exists, I think it would have been a lot more powerful for Toshiro's character development. And I'm definitely not one of those people that just thinks characters around this person should die because it would make more character development. Like I think killing characters off for literally no reason is stupid and try hard. But in this case, I really think that this would have worked for his character a lot better. Would have sold the guilt a lot more, especially because this whole thing is about the consequences of your actions. When you have an arc like that, I don't get why you would keep her around. It would also make it more powerful that Arena is there in his mind and stuff. Like the symbolism would have been better. It just would have been so much better if she died. I really liked his character when it was dealing with like his dad and Marie and stuff like that. But I don't know, the whole message about like, oh, you shouldn't fight for the right thing because it can get people hurt, and then, oh no, like you still need to fight for what you believe in. Like it just didn't land for me, which says a lot because a lot of Persona messages are seemingly things that are like very on the nose and very obvious, like, oh, of course you should do this thing. But even then I felt like those were a lot more nuanced, and I could see a lot of people actually taking the side of the villain, but in a more subconscious way. Like consciously, you're like, oh, that's of course evil, but in your mind, you're like, oh no, I do kind of do that stuff. As for the rest of the 37 hours that I spent in that game, the Phantom Thieves did not need to be there. I can't believe I'm saying this because it's a Persona 5 game, but like, this game feels like the only reason it was a Persona 5 game was because they needed to use the concept of the metaverse. Characters of the Phantom Thieves contribute nothing. They don't grow. They don't do anything. They don't help someone else progress. I know it's framed like that, but I think anyone could have been in close proximity to him and it would have made for the same amount of character development. It could have just been Toshiro and Narina, and I actually think that might have worked better. And they try to like trick you into thinking that they are making substantial progress with him because they'll have the Phantom Thieves like relate what happened to them to Toshiro, but like it just falls so flat because they talk about it for like 2 seconds and sometimes the connections are like really loose and the advice they give isn't good. It's literally just like, I went through this thing and you know, I'm fine. Like, none of it hit hard. It just felt very like, oh, I forgot the Phantom Thieves are here. Do you think the audience would think we wrote this well if we like kind of like drew comparisons between them? I don't know. Overall, it was just a pretty good strategic game, but it had like a story that its serious parts not only were only about 10% of the game, but weren't that great, and I think were probably executed some of the worst ways that the Persona 5 universe has ever done. That fell flat, and then the things that were the other 90% of the story were just completely meaningless padding that wasn't really necessary. Antics weren't funny enough or charming enough to warrant this taking up so much time. I mean this literally, you could probably cut out 20 hours of this game and it wouldn't matter. Except Yusuke, I thought Yusuke was like unnaturally hilarious in this game. I laughed at almost everything he said. Easily the MVP. And while I get that it's supposed to be like a chibi art style and everything, I get that it's like they didn't have the budget to make this anything besides like cardboard cutout sprites like talking to each other, like one comes into frame and the other comes into frame. Like, this game required so much like actually seeing what's happening that this just didn't work at all. 80% of this game is their sprites talking about environments that we can't see. Once you realize that that doesn't relate at all to like the maps we're gonna see or anything, it doesn't really relate to the situations or like the victory requirements or anything, like it's very loosely connected. You could replace their strategic dialogue with anything. It wouldn't matter. This game just doesn't know what to do with its runtime, and so they talk about environments. And if you've ever wanted to sit in a room staring at someone's face and hearing them talk about an environment with details that are so irrelevant because they don't matter to us as an audience at all, then like, I just don't know how they thought that that would be a good game. You have a cast that has made me cry numerous times. I care so much about this cast, and you spend so much time instead of developing them or making their relationship actually feel a lot stronger than a couple sentences of, oh yeah, I can relate. My plot back in Persona 5 was the same. And then immediately forgetting about that. Like, instead of doing any of that, you just talk about stuff that we're not going to be able to see, and all it does is remind me that you didn't have the budget to show me these things. Every single line in this game is just,
Its army is building up. We gotta flank the outer wall of the perimeter, and we got to set off these explosives at this location.
That sounds good. Let's do that. Do you think that their forces are going to outnumber?
Doesn't even matter. It's gonna be the same level regardless of whether I say yes or no.
I just felt like I was wasting my time until the next battle. If I were to recommend anything to someone, I would say if you want to play this game, I would genuinely recommend skipping all of the unvoiced dialogue. It is all pretty much pointless. I wish I could just tell you to skip all of the actual dialogue, but like then you're gonna miss the story. Which, even though you wouldn't be missing out on a lot, I still think that it's kind of worth it in the end. But a lot of the voice dialogue is wasting your time. Like, why even have this fantastical setting if you're not gonna let me actually like see what's going on in it? You're just gonna show me sprites of characters talking about this world that I'm never gonna get to see, and that's just gonna remind me that I can't see it. I don't know. I wasn't even expecting that much from this game, but I was somehow still kind of let down. I just felt like this was kind of a waste of time. It didn't really need to exist. And next time I would kind of just prefer you just leave the story out of it. If this was literally just a collection of strategy levels with a Persona 5 skin, genuinely think I might have actually enjoyed it more. Yeah, unfortunate, but kind of disappointing.